good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It is a pleasure to have you all here. Welcome to the MTaPS Global Learning Series webinar. Today, the USAID Medicines, Technologies, and Pharmaceutical Services program is very pleased to talk about a very important subject. We all know regulation is key to ensure safety, efficacy, and quality of medicines, but within regulation, there is a key regulatory function. A lot of people complain about marketing authorization. A lot of people focus on marketing authorization or registration of medical products as the key to markets. So today we're going to talk about building effective medicines registration systems in low and middle income countries. It is a pleasure. My name is, next one please. My name is Javier Guzman. I'm the technical director of the program, and I'm going to be with you today for 1 hour and a half. In this 1 hour and a half, I'm going to have a very important set of speakers and people who will basically give us their insights into registration. So let me just share with you the agenda and the plan for today. So first we'll have opening remarks from our funder, USAID, and then we'll have our friend Hiti from WHO, who will talk a bit about the global context for regulatory systems strengthening. After Hiti introduces the role of WHO in the global context, we'll get into what we MTaPS are doing to strengthen medicines registration systems. We'll have an overview, and then we'll hear from 4 countries, 2 in Asia, 2 in Africa, where we will see very different experiences, and we will learn the challenges, the successes, and the lessons learned in our work there. After that, we'll have John, who will basically tell us a bit about the private sector engagement in this regulatory system strengthening work. Before we get into the Q&A, we will basically collect all the questions that you will be including throughout the presentations, and we'll have a very lively discussion. So I'll give you some housekeeping rules before we get started. First, please keep your mic muted if you're not speaking. Second, feel free to include as many questions as you want in the chat. We will collect them, as I said, and we will try to answer them all in the Q&A. We'll be recording this meeting, so please notice that. You can get the slides and also the recordings after the meeting. And please speak up and let us know what you think about what the presenters are sharing with us. Without further ado, next please. Let me introduce our funder, Alexis Leonard from USAID. She is the contracting officer's representative lead for the MTaPS program. She is a senior health systems technical advisor within the Office of Health Systems. It is a pleasure to have you here. Alexis, over to you.
Thank you, Javier. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for what should be an interesting webinar led by USAID's MTaPS program on building effective medicines registration systems. USAID's recent launch of our vision of health system strengthening emphasized, among many critical areas, a continued commitment to ensuring that safe, effective, and quality assured medical products are available by supporting strengthening country pharmaceutical and regulatory systems. An effective regulatory system is vital to a strong health system by providing access to safe medical products. The COVID-19 pandemic has only highlighted how critical it is for timely availability of quality medicines and vaccines. In order to continue to drive progress of these key systems, strong collaboration with a multitude of partners, local and global, is required. So we're delighted to have partners from regulatory authorities, the WHO, and the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers speaking with us today and sharing their perspectives. USAID has supported strengthening pharmaceutical and regulatory systems for many years, and we look forward to hearing from countries on how they're continuing to tackle this necessary an often overlooked area of registration, and the current progress being made with the support of the MTaPS program. So thank you again, and we look forward to your questions and participation. Back to you, Javier.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Now we're gonna get into the global context. And as I said, we have the pleasure of welcoming a friend who is a regulator, who used to be a regulator himself, Hiti Silo. He's coming from WHO, where he is the team lead within the Regulatory Systems Strengthening Regulation and Safety Unit. Over to you, Hiti, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Javier, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, and my great pleasure to be invited to this very important meeting. And I'll be providing, as you can see in the program, the context of regulatory system strengthening. If you can take me to the next slide, please. So as you can see here, these are the two major objectives of the work we do in WHO on strengthening regulatory capacities of our member states. The first objective is to build regulatory capacity in member states consistent with good regulatory practices. And for this, I just wanted to also bring to your attention that last October, the expert committee on specifications for pharmaceutical preparations did endorse our new guidelines on good regulatory practices, and this is now available for reference to countries. But secondly, we are very much involved in promoting regulatory cooperation, convergence, and transparency through the networking, work sharing, and of course, reliance. And this is also, just to also inform you that we also just published our new good reliance practices, and be happy to share with you the links to this. Or if one of my colleagues is part of this meeting, then they will also be happy to give you the links. Next slide, please. So here we are trying to of course share with you what is the mandate and why this is important in terms of achieving those two broad objectives on regulatory system strengthening of our member states. One is that, of course, with regards to mandate, we have been mandated to do this work under Resolution 6720 that most of you are aware of, that was adopted in 2014, regulatory systems, resolution on regulatory systems strengthening for medical products. And this also did recognize the importance of strong regulatory systems to any well-functioning healthcare system, and therefore also contributing to SDG. And that's why we have here the importance of this work, that achieving UHC, a particular target 3.8, is very much dependent on well-functioning regulatory systems where you can assure quality and safety of the medical products that are in circulation in a country. Next slide. This is the approach that WHO has been using over the years, and particularly when the resolution was adopted, that is guiding us to support countries. What we call the WHO 5-step capacity building model for national regulatory authorities in building their capacities. The starting point here is development of the relevant tools, methodologies, and of course related procedures for the benchmarking of regulatory systems. And here we are referring to the global benchmarking tool that most of you are aware of. The current revision published in 2018, 2019 expanded to blood and blood products, and now we are working on medical devices and IVDs. And the second step is the actual benchmarking, where we are also involving our partners, including MTaPS here, who have done a great job with us, or in other countries, as you will be witnessing in this session. And then the third step being the formulation of institutional development plan that guide investments in regulatory system strengthening, including on marketing authorization and registration, which is one of the 8 functions, 8 core functions, in addition, of course, to the regulatory system, the overarching system in a country. This fourth step, which requires a lot of investment, is providing technical support and training, where also partners such as MTaPS do contribute. And then the last step is monitoring progress and impact. The ultimate goal being to ensure that our regulators do achieve what we call a stable and functional regulatory system. And in doing this, as you see in this slide, we have introduced a concept all the way from 2016, what we call the coalition of interested parties. Some of you might have heard partners. So there has been changes based on my next slide in terms of the current arrangement of the CIP. I will explain in the follow-up slide, but just on this particular slide, just for you to just recall on the 4 maturity levels that the global benchmarking tool do identify when we assess regulatory capacities in our member states. So we have maturity level 1, where the country or the national regulatory system is actually possessing some elements of a regulatory system. And maturity level 2 is an evolving system, which is still partially performing some essential functions. And our target is to help countries build a stable, well-functioning, and integrated regulatory system. Since the introduction of the GBT in 2016, in collaboration with our partners, we have been able to support countries, and so far we have 6 countries that have achieved maturity level 3, and this is a major progress. And we see that we still have, a number of candidates that are also on the pipeline that have been assessed, and we believe that they will also achieve this target, which is also the target of Resolution 6720. Maturity level 4, these are well-resourced agencies operating at an advanced level of performance, and of course with elements of continuous improvement. These are, we could call this as equivalent to the current SRIs, which are also transforming into WHO listed authorities following the adoption of the definition of a WHO listed authorities late last year, and of course the approval of the WLA policy. And as we speak now, we are actually in of course some major progress in terms of coming up with an operational guidance for WHO listed authorities, where those NRIs that achieve maturity level 3 and 4 will be eligible to apply in addition to the current SRIs to be listed as WHO listed authorities following a performance evaluation process. The slide is also showing you the current status in our member states. Only 53 countries at maturity level 3 and 4, 41 at maturity level 2, and we have more than half of our member states, 194 member states at maturity level 1. And therefore, a lot of work and partners such as MTaPS and of course others that USAID has been generously supporting will have a major impact in supporting our member states to achieve this level. Next slide. This slide is giving you an overview in terms of the purpose and objectives of the Coalition of Interested Parties Network following the approval of the terms of reference late last year. This will provide a framework for collaboration between WHO and participants to the network because it provides for establishment and promotion of a unified, strategic, and coordinated approach to strengthening national and regional regulatory systems, because our collaboration doesn't end at the country level, but it also expands to regional networks of regulators, as we could see in many African countries, particularly the Emirate Partnership Platform. It also contributes to the implementation of Resolution 6720, as well as the common objectives of the participants that are party to the CIP. This also increases the effectiveness of concrete efforts and desired impact in countries and regions, the ultimate goal being to help countries achieve a stable and well-functioning regulatory system. One thing that I wanted to mention here is that, and of course, as Javier has introduced with my personal experience as a regulator over the past close to 20 years, is that you find in countries many partners competing, supporting a country in the same area. And this CIP approach is trying to avoid duplication and of course burdening the countries, and therefore working together as partners in one country will contribute to better impact. The status of the CIP based on the new TORs that are currently under the process of establishing mechanisms for their implementation through our regional offices, that this is a voluntary collaborative mechanism according to WHO rules, regulations, and policies, and of course also complying with the framework for non-state actors, what we call FENSA. We have had excellent pilots in Bangladesh, Nepal, and Rwanda, as you'll be hearing in this meeting, particularly with our partners USAID, MTaPS, PQM+, and others. And this is also likely to expand to other countries in the future, including, for example, Philippines or other countries that will also extend requests to us. Collaboration in benchmarking in the IDP implementation, particularly has been critical, and therefore we had this experience with some of these partners. Next slide. So this is my last slide. So thank you, and happy to take any questions later. But over to you, Javier.
Thank you very much, Hiti. Very, very impressive, and thank you. It's been very important. I will just, highlight 3 points. One is, there's a very beautiful window of opportunity to strengthen regulatory systems and strengthening regulation and registration as the global benchmarking tool is widely accepted and disseminated. The second thing is the task is huge. You showed us how 100 countries are at level 1, 41 countries are at level 2. So a lot of work we all need to be doing. And the third point, which is great, is how we can all work together under the coalition of interested partners. It is great to have a way to collaborate at the country level and avoid duplication. So thank you very much, Hiti, for that. So now we're gonna move to Kate Kikule, who will talk a bit about our approach to building strong medicines registration systems in low and middle income countries. Kate is coming from Uganda. She's now based in the US, where she is the principal technical advisor for the program. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you very much, Javier, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about how USAID MTaPS program is supporting countries to build effective medicine registration systems, looking at the key features of medical products regulation, the significance of product registration, the challenges we encounter while establishing registration systems, and how MTaPS is supporting countries by offering technical assistance to address the gaps in the registration systems in the various countries. Next slide. The key features of medical product regulation, as you may all be aware, involve key attributes of safety, efficacy, and quality. Safety, trying to balance the risk and benefit profile to prevent harm to patients, and the efficacy of the medicines to ensure that they achieve their intended purpose, and the quality aspects in terms of ensuring that the medicines attain the right specifications as specified by the manufacturers and in the official pharmacopoeia. Next slide, please. Before a medicine is released on the market from the clinical laboratories and after conducting the clinical trials, it goes through various stages of control all throughout the distribution and supply chain up to the end user. And for the purpose of the presentation today, we are going to focus at one key stage, that is the registration stage, looking at the key regulatory function of how products are approved before they are released on the market. Next slide, please. Product registration, which is commonly referred to as marketing authorization, involves a series of processes of evaluation of product data and information that is submitted by the manufacturer to the national regulatory authority. This information, which may be in form of paper dossiers or electronic dossiers, is submitted to the agency, and it's assessed to assure that it meets the safety, quality, and efficacy attributes before it's released for manufacturing and importation, especially for those products that are imported from foreign countries, and also distribution and sale. In some of the countries that we have worked, we see that different standards that are employed for imported products as opposed to also the locally manufactured products. So yet in principle, it is important that the same standards are employed because the end user is the same. So in this respect, we find that different standards are employed for maybe good manufacturing practices, for locally manufactured products. And you find that another issue that you find is that there are various complex products that may be required on the market, and with the inadequate limited resources, there is the issue that countries could benefit from using reliance mechanism, which involves utilization of regulatory decisions that have been made by other authorities so as to reduce on the time that the products are registered. The key elements of an effective registration system comprise of a legal and regulatory framework, here ensuring that there are various regulations for handling variations and other specialized products, having a competent human resource workforce that is in terms of numbers and in terms of specialization, like with the capacity to assess bioequivalence studies and also specialized products like biologicals and vaccines. And the other key element is also to ensure that, to apply digitization of the registration process to assist in improving on transparency and accountability, and also communication. Here, this digitization assists in terms of tracking the applications and communication to the applicants. Next slide, please. There are challenges that we encounter while establishing registration systems. I find that the lengthy procedures to update the legal and regulatory framework, because you find some of these legislations are outdated and need to be updated to match the current pharmaceutical dynamics in the industry. And so it takes a long time because it's not only the National Regulatory Authority that is involved, but also the Ministry of Health and the judicial system. And all this impact on the time that is taken to evaluate the products before they are put on the market, and changing procedures in terms of ensuring that at least maybe shorter abridged processes are followed. Changes in leadership can also impact on the steady progress that would have been registered. And of particular importance is the technical workforce to conduct product assessments. There are inadequate numbers of technical assessors for the quality and clinical aspects. And you find in some countries, there are just a handful of people that are involved in assessment of dossiers. And also, like in the current situation that we are facing, like in the COVID-19 pandemic, you find that attention is given to products maybe to address the pandemic, and less is given to other products, leading to delays. And so it has been found that on average, it takes around 4 to 7 years to register products in low and middle income countries, as compared to 1 to 2 years in high income countries. So there is a need to rely on other well-resourced agencies like the US FDA and the WHO pre-qualification scheme, using mechanisms like the WHO CRP in order to expedite registration of these products. Next slide, please. So the MTaPS program is supporting countries using various strategies to ensure that we build robust registration systems. We conduct benchmarking assessments using the WHO GBT tool that Hiti has talked about. But before we go into all this, we work with the authorities' leadership to gain consensus and determine the priority areas to work on. We also promote good governance by ensuring that the departments are well aligned in terms of leadership and reporting relationship and appropriate job descriptions. We assist countries to update the laws and regulations by trying to align them with international best practices, and also promoting convergence by enabling the countries to to harmonize within the regions where they are located. We also assist countries to implement quality management systems in order to achieve the ISO certification. Next slide, please. Another important factor is developing the human resource capacity by offering capacity building in terms of training in basic assessment of medicine dossiers, but also knowledge transfer to for advanced specialized products like biologicals and vaccines, and assessment of bioequivalence studies. We also assist countries to implement good review practices and also digitization of the registration system. Next slide, please. MTaPS is offering technical assistance by conducting benchmarking exercise like we've done in Nepal. We have worked with the WHO and other implementing partners to perform assessments in order to identify the gaps and weaknesses. And then for some of the countries where we come in when they've already conducted the benchmarking exercises, we work with them to implement the institutional development plans by identifying the priority areas, like for example, of critical importance is laying down the legal and regulatory framework, which forms a platform on which to implement other activities like development of guidelines and procedures and other activities within the registration system. This we've done in Bangladesh, Mozambique, Nepal, and Rwanda. Next slide, please. We've also helped countries to implement quality management system in a phased approach by creating awareness and training the regulators and assessors, specifically in quality management systems, in performance of internal quality audits, and also performed actual audits with the aim of achieving the ISO 9001:2015 certification. And it's not just to get the certificate, but also to improve on the effectiveness of operation of the registration activities within the various authorities. We've also helped countries to build the capacity of the assessors by imparting knowledge and improving on the skill set, training them in the basic principles of assessment of medicine dossiers. And also we are working on developing an e-learning course that will enable new assessors to acquire the technical skills for evaluation of dossiers. And even this will have an impact on sustainability because we are operating in a program mode. And so once we leave, at least the countries will have the sustained improvement in the knowledge of assessment of dossiers. And another key area that we are working in is deployment of our software, PharmaDex, in countries. And this will also facilitate improvements in tracking of applications throughout the registration process and expediting the registration of medicines and transfer and authorization onto the market. Next slide, please. So we will now look at in detail how MTaPS is supporting countries in Bangladesh, Mozambique, and also Nepal and Rwanda. Over to you, Dr. Jibun. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I am Dr. Jebunista Rahman, Country Project Director of USAID MTaPS Bangladesh. Today I am just presenting the strengthening the medicine registration system in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. In Bangladesh, we are working with DGDA to strengthen the regulatory system in the country, including improving the registration and marketing authorization of medical products. What we found when we started work with the DGDA, we found there is a very limited financial autonomy of DGDA. We discovered that the registration fees was not retained by the DGDA. It goes to the government treasury. For renewing the periodically reviewing and marketing authorization granted, there are procedures are established and available, but yet not to be implemented. The DGDA may acknowledge other recognized regulatory bodies or authorities, but they didn't rely on the reports also. Because of the small market size, the Manufacturers Association called Bangladesh Association for Pharmaceutical Industries, like BAPI, was not showing any interest to switch off or to the WHO pre-qualification of the priority medical product. A huge number of medical products, like roughly 40,000 has been registered in the country already and undergoing the renewal every 5 years, is in which only around very few numbers of DGDA inspectors who are not adequate and they're not very much adequately involved in this process. That means that the standard registration process is not followed adequately. And the country also hadn't implemented an electronic dossier submission evaluation system also. Next slide, please. So what we did to address these challenges, MTaPS has been supporting DGDA on several fronts. To start with, under the WHO Coalition of Interested Parties, CIP umbrella, as Mr. Selo mentioned, MTaPS helped with conducting GBT self-assessment, with developing the institutional development plans or IDPs. And MTaPS continuing the support to implement these IDPs to raise the maturity level of the National Regulatory Authority to a functional status of 3. MTaPS, in consultation with other partners and DGDA, helped to form a groups under each function and created a culture of working together to implement the IDPs. As you know that the DGDA has a 5-year strategic plan that has been expired in the 2021. So MTaPS supported in the development of the action plan based on that strategic plan that has been used by the DGDA. MTaPS has also started supporting the development of a quality manual as part of the QMS, which is one of the recommendations came from the current CIP meeting. And there's a special things that MTaPS working in Bangladesh, both with the government and the industry, to build a strong medicine registration system. We conducted capacity building session as we are involved in this capacity building part on CTD guidelines for both DGDA and manufacturers to implement the CTD guidelines for cardiovascular medicine registration and approval. Till now, there's 50 inspectors from DGDA and 52 people from the 38 manufacturers are trained, and they're working on this registration systems. MTaPS also assisted DGDA with public consultation to adapt guidelines of international regulatory organization that will help increase the GBT score, like for the GMP, dossier submission, and marketing authorization applications. Next slide, please. If you think why it matters, we are working with the DGDA. Our interventions are making differences because DGDA is moving towards quality practice by addressing and implementing the IDPs that are indicators of its progress. Regular meetings and training sessions reveals the staff mindset towards the quality, efficacy, and safety of medical products they're assigned to protect. And both DGDA and industry are equipped with knowledge and skill set on CTD dossier assessment, similar to the product registration standard at the international level. And we are also happy to share that the DGDA is targeting to implement the CTD guidelines for vaccines registrations in the near future. Next slide, please. So what is our next steps? MTaPS has just started out to have a long way to go. In the recent CIP meetings, MTaPS has been assigned to support the IDP implementation in 4 key regulatory areas, which is well aligned with MTaPS work plan with the DGDA to reach the maturity level of 3. And as you know that the current 5-year strategic plan is about to expire in 2021. So MTaPS will support with the development of the next 5-year strategic plan along with the action plan of DGDA for DGDA. We also plan to address the gaps identified in a recent MTaPS study of MNC's medicines registration systems, which was conducted in 9 countries, including Bangladesh. With the recent DGDA's focus on vaccines, MTaPS will assist with the development and implementation of good review practices. And one of the big priority of the DGDA is using the digitalized practice process to expedite the registration process through an integrated regulatory information management system, that is IRIMS. So we are working with the DGDA to see how we can support, as this will be the greatly increase the transparency and access to quality assured medicine. So as we are working with the DGDA, now I am introducing the Major General Mahabub Rahman, the Director General of DGDA in Bangladesh. We will hear from our Director General of DGDA about medicine registration. Over to you, Major General Mahabub Rahman.
Pharmaceutical sectors in Bangladesh is doing very good. We manufacture about, we fulfill our 98% of our national requirement, and we only import 2% of our medicines from abroad. And not only that, we export our medicines more than 148 countries, not only in Asia and Africa, but also Europe and South American countries like USA and Canada. But the main purpose of DGDA is to ensure the quality, safety, and efficacy of medicine. And to do that, you need a very strong regulatory system. And here, the MTaPS USAID, they are helping this DGDA to strengthen our activities. You know that we have 9 functions, and MTaPS USAID is actively involved with us to strengthen our regulatory functions. And the DGDA Bangladesh, we are trying to get WHO maturity level 3, and by this time already we have achieved maturity level 3 of our chemical laboratory, that is our NCL, National Control Laboratory. We have got a pre-qualification in May last year, but we are yet to get the maturity level 3 of all the 9 functions. So we are actively working on this issue, and MTaPS USAID, they are helping us. Especially they are helping us in respect to our registration process of our country, medicine registration process, that is to develop the CTD format in our country. And also they have helped us to develop institutional development goal program, and then your 5-year national strategy, and then action plan. They are just helping us in this regard. And during this COVID situation, they are also helping us to develop our national pharmacovigilance protocol, and also your online reporting system, or AEFI, that is adverse effect following immunizations. So I think that MTaPS USAID, they are doing excellent job to support this DGDA, and we express our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to US government and USAID for their active role to strengthen DGDA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, sir. Thank you. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Jabun. Now we're going to hear from Denilson, who's going to tell us a bit about the experience in Mozambique. Over to you, Denilson.
Thank you, Javier. I'm Denilson Namburet, country project lead from MTaPS Mozambique. I will talk about the experience of building a strong medicines registration here in Mozambique. Next slide, please. In the beginning of project, we found a request from the DNF to support DNF to transform DNF in the semi-autonomous drug regulatory authority. One of key areas was, of course, the registration. So the request was to improve the registration capacity in terms of good review practice, assessment of medical products dossiers, quality management for registration. And we found in Mozambique also lack of functional information system of registration. So the request was to improve the PharmaDex, and also lack of regulations, guidelines, and procedures to enforce, such as in the areas of good review practices and also regulations provisions. Next slide, please. And we did what we did is aligned what we found in the country, and in the areas of regulation and guidelines for registration, we developed the guidelines for good review practice and guidelines on labeling and package of leaflet of medicines. In terms of capacity building, we focus on two areas. One was the capacity building that we did. We trained the medicine assessors in the good review practice, and also we supported DNF in hosting the Zanzibona assessors meeting here in Mozambique, and supported the participation of DNF in the Zanzibona dossier evaluation workshop. That was a very great experience, because was an opportunity to Mozambique receive experience sharing for other countries in terms of the first harmonization between the drug regulatory authorities. The second, the assessment practices that was done in Zanzibona, knowledge to address with difficulties in African countries, such as the high backlog of dossiers, and also the difficulties to assess bioequivalence studies and also biologic products. In terms of information system for registration, we deployed the PharmaDex software to enable applicants to submit applications online and update. We are now updating PharmaDex to the Ectd. Next slide, please. What it matters for Mozambique? Why it matters for Mozambique? These are the results that we expect, and with that actions that we did and we are doing. First, the most efficient and transparent approach in the evaluation of dossiers, reduce the time needed to register a medicine and reduce the backlog of dossiers in the DNF, the improvement of compliance with GBT, and stronger legal framework. With these results, we are doing we are in the right way to support DNF in the transformation of an arm, and that was recognized by an arm that is a good results, as you will see in the testimony of Dr. Velma. So next slide, please. What are the next steps for Mozambique? Two areas. One is continuing to develop the PharmaDex, and second is the build capacity for the assessment of the dossiers. Thank you. So yes, In terms of the statements for the government partner, we have the statement from Dr. Velma, that is the head of registration department of National Directorate of Pharmacy. This is the statement. MTaPS Mozambique supported the National Directorate of Pharmacy, DNF, in hosting the 22nd Regional Joint Medicines Registration Zanzibona Assessors meeting held on March 18, 2009 in Maputo. MTaPS found the participation of an additional DNF medicines registration pharmacists to be the next section of the joint Zanzibona dossier evaluation workshop in Botswana, June 17 to 22, 2019. MTaPS provided a workshop on principles and the application of good review practice for medicines registration and supported the development of good review practice guidelines. This support is an important contribution to the improvement of the DNF medicines registration system. Dr. Velma Paul, head of registration department, DNF, and I'm in Mozambique. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielson, for sharing with us the experience in Mozambique. Now we're going to Asia. Dr. Berna Trapp will talk a bit about Nepal. Berna, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I am MTaPS Program Director in Nepal. The MTaPS program has been implemented a little over a year, and I will talk about the medicines registration in Nepal, some of the challenges and the progress. There are many challenges in Nepal, not only in drug registration, but in the whole regulatory body. The number of staff is grossly insufficient, and because it's part of the Ministry of Health, employment of new staff has to be recruited through Public Service Commission. So presently, there are only 4 assessors. You saw in an earlier presentation that in Bangladesh had over 50. So we have overwhelming workload, and that is a huge challenge. The WHO best practices is only partially implemented, and we still, in spite of having a management information system that is electronic, hard copies are used and manually handled. The existing management information system is poor, doesn't support very many functions, and has unreliable data quality. We also lack regional collaboration and harmonization, and we don't have a quality management system. The fee for registration is low, but it does not in any way reflect the actual cost. Next slide, please. So what did we do in Nepal? Well, we were very much helped by WHO Global Benchmarking Tool assessment, and we have now over 200 recommendations on how we can improve. The maturity level is low, so there are many areas that need support. We have started implementing PharmaDex, which will not only cover more areas, but will also improve data use and also reporting quality. We have done the revision of the law, which now is in last steps before it has to be submitted to the parliament and approved. It sounds easy, but that is a difficult challenge. But the new law describes the new roles and responsibilities. It reduces renewal validity from 1 year today to 5 years or 3 years, so that we can better manage. The reorganization of the authority has also been drafted with new staffing norms. Again, it requires government to approve of this new organizational setup and the new staffing norm, and that is a challenge. We have started introducing WHO review practices with implementation of the global benchmarking tool recommendations, PharmaDex, that provides a new process flow for the registration. We are building capacity in registration, a review of applications through the Asia Bureau, and hopefully also soon on the e-learning. There are many, many challenges, but the biggest one is really the staffing issue, and we will require help from everyone to convince the government of the need to increase the staffing norms. So why does it matter? That's the next slide. So why does it matter in Nepal? Well, there are two key reasons I want to highlight. One of them, we have already heard, safety, efficacy, and quality. But that's especially important because studies have shown that Nepal is faced with many substandard products and falsified products on the market. We need to harmonize registration process and work together with neighboring countries because our resources, and especially staffing resources, are very weak. We need to increase governance, transparency, and efficiency in drug registration. The other area that is important is the local industry. And if we can introduce a stronger medicines application quality by the manufacturers, it allows them better to export and also improve the quality of local products in the market. The next slide. So what is next for Nepal? Well, we'll finalize hopefully this year the law. We will have new staffing norms approved by the government. We hope that the new reorganized structure with decentralization will help and be approved by the government, but will also help in our capacity and number of staff. We will operationalize PharmaDex, not only to include the registration, but also inspection, pharmacovigilance, and other of the existing and to be existing modules, hopefully developed this year. We will also include registration of medical devices, and we'll revise the workflow to be in line with WHO review practices. The capacity of assessors will be improved, and we will start orientation of the applicants to the new systems. The harmonization and collaboration, both within the Southeast Asian regulatory network, but also CIP, is very important for Nepal. We have started a lot of work in the quality management system and hope before the end of 2021 to have ISO certification. And the great help from WHO to list out the recommendations for improved maturity has started being implemented. There is a long way to go, but we know the way to go and we have started walking. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Berna. Now we were gonna hear from John Patrick Mwesiya, who's gonna tell us a bit about Rwanda. JP, over to you.
Thank you so much, Javier, and thank you, colleagues from the other MTaPS countries that have shared the experience. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. As Javier mentioned, I'm John Patrick Mwesiya, Country Project Director for MTaPS Rwanda. And today, in a few minutes, I'll be taking you through what MTaPS has been doing with Rwanda in terms of building or putting in place an effective medicine registration system. Next slide. So what we, as MTaPS, we found in Rwanda, as we've been discussing, Rwanda has a regulatory agency which is named as Rwanda FDA or Rwanda Food and Drugs Authority. That is one of the youngest NMRIs in the world, which was established a few years ago in 2018. So coming to Rwanda, what we found in terms of the regulatory framework, first of all, it was inadequate. We found that the institution had no strategic plan. the set of skills required for product assessment was not adequate. The IT infrastructure was also inadequate. Registration processes are inefficient. The institution did not have any of the advanced processes or processes that could be required in terms of quality management implementation. There were a lot of duplications in terms of what other efficient or used to be called stringent regulatory agencies were doing. So the products registered in other stringent NMRAs or pre-qualified by institutions like WHO would be again going through similar processes as products that have not been looked at by any competent authorities. Next slide. So with MTaPS coming in, we have been working with Rwanda FDA to elaborate or come up with different regulatory capacity being put in place, in which we have worked with Rwanda FDA and its stakeholders to develop some of the regulations that are mentioned here that would support registration of medicines in the country. At the moment, we have worked on several documents, including the good review practices that we have developed with Rwanda FDA, guidelines on variations, guidelines on new medicines registration. We have also worked with Rwanda FDA to build the capacity of around 55 medicines assessors, building capacity on common technical document, which is currently being the norm of the day in terms of medicine registration. So we hope that these capacities that are being put in place will be helpful in ensuring that registration of the products is on course and goes on very well. We have also worked with Rwanda FDA to start processes of establishing a quality management system, whereby we started with the situation analysis. At the moment, we have worked with Rwanda FDA to put up a quality management system manual with several other SOPs that would accompany or that would enable the institution to implement the quality management system. In the additional support also regarding to what MTaPS has managed to work with Rwanda FDA was to endorse the collaborative regulatory procedure put in place by WHO, of which at the moment Rwanda FDA was able to approve use of the vaccines that are currently being used. The COVID-19 vaccines have been registered in Rwanda as part of the ongoing processes in the implementation of the CRP. So why does it matter, or why it matters for Rwanda FDA to have this in place is that Rwanda FDA or the country is looking at having strong, efficient registration system which ensures access to safe and infectious medicines, including other medical products. Also, the process will support the country reduce the substandard and falsified products on its market. Also, building confidence of the population in terms of the existing health care system, improving patient outcomes, and also promoting local and international investment in the pharma sector. These are some of the benefits that the country is looking at in terms of strengthening the regulatory system. So what are we planning to do next with Rwanda FDA? We are conducting the internal audits to determine the readiness of Rwanda FDA in terms of going for ISO 9001:2015 certification. We are working with the team to develop e-learning courses to facilitate continuous education about medicines evaluation and registration for both the current assessors as refresher courses and also for the new assessors that will be joining, so that these online resources could be available. We are also continuing to support the development of skill sets in terms of the evaluators in the specialized areas like bioequivalence, vaccines, and biologicals, such that at the time when these products are coming in the country, then we have competent staff who can do the actual assessment. Next. That was from Rwanda. In case of any other questions about the presentation from Rwanda, then we'll be available to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Over to you, Kate. Yes.
Thanks, Javier. We look briefly at the lessons learned through the process of working with countries to strengthen their registration system. Next slide. By using the WHO global benchmarking tool, we have seen that it forms a uniform platform to measure the functionality of the authorities, and it also provides an opportunity to identify the gaps and weaknesses so that the support offered is given in a more structured and systematic manner. And updating laws and regulations is critical to align with the current situation in countries, but also to apply international best practices, like, for example, use of the model law that was developed by under the African Union initiative. And also fostering regional and international collaboration is critical to promote convergence of medicine registration, but also medicine regulation overall. And also utilization of reliance recognition and harmonization, which would expedite the registration of products and improve access to the much needed products on the market. Next slide. Quality management systems are very crucial in promoting efficient implementation of registration activities. And I think what is critical also is the use of electronic softwares for undertaking registration activities. This improves transparency and efficiency, avoiding a loss of documents, and also reducing on storage, and overall improving on the expeditious registration of products. And then capacity building of assessors. There is a need to also assure quality of the assessment. So by imparting knowledge and expertise to the assessors, you achieve the quality assessment and ensure that the products that are released on the market are safe and of good quality. And of course, monitoring and evaluation, which is very important for identification of continuous areas for improvement. Next slide. Finally, we have publications that are available for access to all, and all the lessons that we have highlighted are documented in these articles, which you can access on the USAID MTaPS website. Thank you. Over to you, Javier.
Thank you very much, Kate. Before we get into the questions and answers, we're going to hear the perspective from the private sector. So Dr. John Mwangi is the head of regulatory affairs and quality assurance in East and West Africa, East, West, and Central Africa for Bayer. But he will talk about, the perspective of the IFPMA, the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Javier, and everyone else. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're listening to us from. It's my pleasure to take the remaining few minutes to give a few thoughts and perspective from an industry end of things. And first of all, also to thank you all the speakers and all the work that has been done by MTaPS it contributes a lot into strengthening the regulatory systems we have especially in the low and middle income countries. If I speak specifically from the industry perspective, the way we see things is, and in this case, sitting right in the middle, and Kate alluded also to it a little bit when she gave the overview of the process for bringing products to market, the life cycle of product development, and specifically zeroing in on registration processes, which is one of the steps, but could also be a point that could affect the access of these products to the people who need it. So we from industry, for instance, if you look at the slides that I'm showing here, have seen that, of course, we have to be in line with certain regulations, be it on life cycle management. When products are introduced into the market, they also have to be maintained. There is post-approval changes. We also have to contend with review timelines and the requirements, as well as dossier content. What you've observed over the last so many years, let me speak, for instance, over the last 1 decade, there has been progress, and a lot of that in the pharma industry, as well as in the regulatory space that we operate in the continent of Africa. As I alluded to, we have the requirements and procedures which have come into place, and they are there to safeguard the public, to make sure that the products that reach the patients are of the right quality and the right safety standard. On the other hand, these requirements, if not well structured, could actually have a negative impact in terms of ensuring access of these medicines which are developed to reach the patients. And HITI, Silo from WHO, and also you could pick it from the countries that are presented, that different countries, not only in Africa, but around the world, are in different levels of maturity. And this is something very good when we see the movement of countries moving from the bulk of the 100 that we saw, going towards maturity level 3 and 4, which is a journey, but it's something which feeds into the strong regulatory systems that we aspire for the continent. Now, speaking specifically about African continent, we as industry actually appreciate, and we continue to participate in that space of strengthening regulatory systems. One way we see that this can be done, and it's one among many, and happy to hear that MTaPS is also actively engaged in this area, is actually harmonizing the processes and requirements. As I said, it is good to have the requirements as we have seen them and developing guidelines, but they need to be within a certain framework, that they are harmonized, they are speaking the same language, so to say. And where this has happened, we have actually seen that there has been positive impact in terms of ensuring access of products to the patients. And when I say access here, it's not just about the product being available, because being available could mean in itself without having the right quality of product, which in this case is assured by strong regulatory systems, then that does not speak wholly into product availability and access in this case. We go to the next slide. What is the business case? Why invest in strengthening regulatory systems? Some of the things, and this list is not exhaustive, and we have seen this over the period of time, especially the last 10 years, is that we see that once the systems have been strengthened, we have a predictable way of availing products to the patients, and often it is a faster one. I saw that some of the statistics there about taking 4 to 7 years, getting products to the market, and happy to see that with the recent, interventions to strengthen the regulatory systems, these timelines are coming down, which is something good, because it also ensures that the patients in the low and middle income countries access the same products as those in the high income countries. Another very important thing is, we build into sustainable supply chains. How do we handle post-approval changes? Without a strong regulatory system, which has guidelines and processes in place, then you often may run into, stockouts, because products cannot be reliably kept in the market. Then very importantly is that it ensures that we have the same standard for all, and that is important. And closely related to that also is we are able to achieve production and supply pooling by manufacturers. Production of pharmaceutical products currently and in the future will remain a global affair. So when you are subscribing to the same standard, because you have all strong regulatory systems, and it's easy to pool and enjoy the benefits of economies of scale and everything else that comes with supply pooling, and so on and so forth. And just to highlight just one more, and this speaks a little bit more into Africa, it also attracts local and regional manufacture of medicines, because then one standard can be applied across a set of countries or even a region or even a continent. And this will not only have an impact in ensuring that products are accessible to the patients, and now we are talking about COVID vaccines, for instance, but it would also speak into the economics of these countries that we serve. If you go to the next slide, sorry, yeah. Having seen the benefits of why we need to strengthen regulatory systems, how can we do it? And here I think we all need to, speak in a collaborative language, because it's not a job for one person or one entity. It's a job for all stakeholders, from industry, from what MTaPS and the other organizations are doing, to the regulators. But and I picked just a few examples here. How can we collaborate and strengthen regulatory systems? And in this case, I speak about Africa, but I think these lessons can also be shared with other countries. One of them is supporting the topic of harmonization and convergence of regulatory requirements, so that in the end, it's not one country having its own requirement and another one the same, because what this has done in the past is to fragment the little resources that are available to regulate these medicines. One practical way, and speaking into the topic we've been having now for the last 1 or so hours, is actually the development of guidelines and tracking the implementation by the countries. And we've seen examples shared here. We saw for Rwanda, for instance, that this is somewhere that MTaPS has participated to do this. One particular outcome also from here is that we end up minimizing administrative hurdles, which in the past have hampered, access and in a timely way of medicines to the patients in the countries. And one more important thing is we are able to take advantage of scientific regulatory decisions made not only in one locality, but made in another locality, because we are subscribing to the same harmonized requirement and way of doing things. One other area where we could also collaborate and support is in promoting the so-called risk-based approaches, because what these tend to do is that they increase efficiency in terms of using the limited resources we have, from industry, from regulators, from all the other organizations, without necessarily compromising the quality of the decisions that come out of there. One practical aspect there would be collaborative procedures that we have had from one of the presenters here, and also the use of reliance practices. As you will see, it's not reliance is just taking the decision from another country. Is actually knowing how to apply it for your own country to make your regulatory decision. If we could support the countries in low and middle income countries to reach that level of effectively using risk-based approaches while safeguarding the public health in the respective countries, that I think would help strengthen the systems we have. Another one would be about infrastructure, and happy to also see that MTaPS is playing a role here. When we speak especially about information management system, because this becomes a platform for one, sharing information, so that even as we speak about reliance processes, that also needs to be on a certain platform. And this is about work sharing and also, sharing information between regulatory entities. But even more importantly, and we saw this during, and we continue to see it during COVID crisis, is that the countries which have invested in robust IMS, information management systems and IT platforms, they have continued to work almost uninterrupted compared to the ones that don't have these systems in place. And I think this is a low-hanging fruit that, we could see a lot of strengthening of the regulatory systems that we have in the continent if this is addressed. And just coming close to the end of my conversation, I cannot forget about capacity building. And again, good to see that MTaPS is also supporting there. When you speak about, training for assessors and increasing the capacity for assessment that we have in the continent, even as they work together among the countries. And finally, the whole idea to support Africa Medicines Agency, ratification. I think there is call to action to all stakeholders, all those involved here and the ones not here, to continue advocating in the various countries in the African continent to reach to reach the stage where we can have Africa Medicines Agency being established. And the current process is about ratification of the treaty, and we are almost there. I think the numbers currently could be 9 to 10. And still having 6 or 5 countries remaining to be ratified, because this will be a culmination, a good culmination of what I started with about harmonizing regulatory requirements and having one platform for the continent. So because of time, I don't want to continue beyond there, but I wanted just to highlight that and also pass a message of thank you to MTaPS for inviting us to speak about these topics, and also to say thank you for participating in strengthening regulatory systems, especially here in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. So we have some time for questions and answers. We've received several questions in the chat. We've been answering in the chat, but we will have a couple of live questions. The first one to get started is for Hiti. We've heard a lot about reliance. We've heard a lot about harmonization and convergence. Hiti, can you please talk a bit about the lessons learned from the COVID pandemic in that regard, and the launch of the good reliance practices and how that applies to the topic we are discussing? Over to you, Hiti.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you very much, and thank you all speakers and of course the participants. Just once again to say that, and thank you, Razia, for sharing the link to the guidelines that have been just published. Our experience in the context of country readiness, country preparedness and response to COVID, particularly in country authorizations, has been great, because most countries were unable actually to receive a formal submission from the manufacturers in view of the emergency, the emergency situation under which we are operating. And therefore, most countries did rely on WHO emergency use listing for them to take decisions. So what we did, we were giving access by signing confidentiality agreement between the country and WHO, of course, on the consent of the manufacturers, for the countries to get access to the dossier that has been submitted to a pre-qualification program, but also assessment reports. And in that context, we experienced that most countries were quick to actually expedite approvals. We were able to see around, slightly over 100, actually, to be specific, 101 countries giving in-country authorizations within 15 days after the emergency use listing by WHO for one or the other, particularly the AstraZeneca vaccines. And I'm referring here to the countries that are actually supported through the COVAX facility. So the response was great, and of course the need for countries also to work together through the regional networks was also well experienced, because prior to the countries approving, actually there has been a series of webinars that were organized by WHO in collaboration with partners through our regional offices to talk to the regulators, to share the latest information, and to get them prepared, including being part of what is called national development and deployment and vaccination plans. That has also included in this guidance the expected country readiness for approval of this product. So what pathways exist in the countries? and how long does it take for them to give approvals, including import permits. So import permits, the guidance was at least not more than 5 days, and of course, approvals for 15 working days. And therefore, this was the experience. The response was very good. So because they were well prepared, and this actually gives us a good ground for dissemination of the good reliance practices that were just published. And very soon you will also be seeing press releases on these two very important tools, the good reliance practices, as well as good regulatory practices, which complement also one of the important tools for regulators for streamlining regulatory processes and procedures, the quality management, the guidelines on quality management system, which was actually published in 2020, beginning of 2020, after it was endorsed in 2019. So major progress, and we see that the way to go, regardless of the size of the agency, regardless of the maturity level, reliance seems to be the only way forward. And I hope this answers the question. And thank you, Avi.
Thank you very much, Hiti. This is very enlightening. You talked about regional approaches, so I'm going to ask Denilson to talk a bit about Zazibona. We got questions about membership, about South Africa, about Mozambique. Denilson, can you please talk a bit about our experience with Zazibona and how it works? Over to you.
Oh, okay. I will be brief. First, I would like to say that Zazibona was a great experience for Mozambique. First, on the to support the organization and the hosting of the workshop, and second, in Botswana, where MTaPS Mozambique provided support for DNF member to participate in a workshop in Zazibona, where has sharing experience with other colleagues of other drug regulatory authorities in the assessment of the dossiers. Other thing that would like to inform is that Mozambique is participating in the process of Zazibona currently, and as dossiers that are being evaluated using the Zazibona approach. About the question regarding the participation or not from South Africa, I have to confirm with the DNF about that. If because I have to be clear, it's regarding the participation in the meeting, regional meeting, or the participation with Zazibona, because South Africa is a membership also as Mozambique, not membership, but is participating in the process of Zazibona. About the workshop, I can confirm it with DNF about the participation of South Africa in the regional meeting that was in Maputo. Yeah, that is the update.
Thank you, Denilson. Now we go to Bangladesh. A question for you, Jabun. If you can talk a bit about why cardiovascular diseases were selected for the pilot for the Ectd, or talk a bit about the Ectd implementation, that would be great. Jabun, over to you.
Thank you, Javier, for this question. Yes, it is really challenging for implement the Ectd guideline in Bangladesh. As you know, I discussed already that capacity building and limited HR. So it was the decision from DA and also the medicine societies that at first they have to start it with this cardiovascular disease medicine, cardiovascular medicine registrations, and they are develop the capacity of the assessors and other from the DGDA and also the people from the manufacturers to implement the Ectd for cardiovascular medicines registration. And definitely the DGDA has some plan to scale up slowly and in phase manner to introduce the other medicines registration system to strengthen the medicine registration system in Bangladesh. So we have, because as you know that I already mentioned that there is huge drugs, around 40,000 are at present are under the process of renewal and assessment. So they are focusing on the DGDA. They said that started with the cardiovascular medicines and also for the Ectd. And as you know that we already mentioned that in next the DGDA has the plan to also targeting to implement the CTD guidelines for vaccine registration in coming days. So these are the things. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Deboon. Now a question for you, Kate. We've had a lot of questions about how different countries can engage with MTaPS and also what's the scope of our activities. We've talked about registration here, but there are questions about, inspections, and if you can talk a bit about that, that would be great. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Javier, and thanks for the questions that have been raised in the chat, and thanks for your active participation. USAID MTaPS program, it's implemented by Management Sciences for Health and funded by the USAID. And so we as a program are engaged in supporting countries to build their pharmaceutical systems, more specifically in the area of regulatory systems. So we support countries in areas, in various areas, mainly in the general regulatory systems, that is looking at the legal and regulatory framework. We work also in the strengthening the quality management systems, and then in the key regulatory functions of marketing authorization, product registration, and also regulatory inspection and licensing of establishments, and also pharmacovigilance. We have a very, supporting countries in the area of monitoring adverse events, and especially in this area now when we are, countries are introducing the COVID-19 vaccine. So specifically for the issue, for the area of regulatory inspections, we do also offer that support. And currently we are, as you heard from Bina, we are working in Nepal and also in Bangladesh and Rwanda to strengthen their regulatory inspection and also licensing of pharmacies and drug outlets for that matter. And the other question, how can countries tap into the support that is being offered with the funding from USAID? It's important for, if it is the regulatory authorities to and the Ministry of Health, to have dialogue with USAID missions in the country missions to express their need. And because we get the funding from USAID, and once there is once the mission agrees to fund these areas, then we can come in and offer that support. So it is important that the leadership in the various countries have a dialogue with the USAID missions. And of course, we have our COR team in the Washington DC area. We can also have dialogue with the USAID mission at the headquarters. So that is how best you can have that dialogue. Over to you, Javier.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. And we are getting to the final part of the session. Thank you very much to the presenters. Thank you very much for the audience. We had wonderful participation, very interesting insights. I'll summarize, a bit what I learned and what we heard. There's a very big opportunity in terms of strengthening regulatory and registration systems with the global benchmarking tool. USAID is funding MTaPS to, work with countries to strengthen good governance, legislative frameworks, good practices, quality management systems, information systems, but clearly we have a lot of challenges and we cannot do this on our own. So that's why is work that will be done in collaboration with WHO, with other implementing partners, and the platform of the Coalition of Interested Parties is a very interesting platform to collaborate and to avoid duplication. At the end of the day, we are all interested in securing access to safe, effective, quality assured medicines. And there are many interesting new developments like good reliance practices, as we heard from Hiti. So thank you very much for your participation. You can get more information on our website, and please reach out. Here you see the contact. Alexis is our COR. Thank you very much and have a good day.